This week on Quadriga, game-changing elections, the end of austerity in Europe? It's all change in France as socialist François Hollande profits from voter anger over spending cuts designed to fight the European financial crisis. His predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy, is in good company as one government after another tumbles across the continent. The Greek election results could prove more fateful. There, voters delivered a punishing blow to the two-party ruling coalition that has spearheaded the crippling austerity drive. The outcome leaves the country's political future and the Eurozone's stability hanging in the balance. Your host on today's show is Ali Aslan.
Hello and welcome to Quadriga. This week has seen the return of the Euro crisis. Election results in both France and Greece have in essence produced more questions than answers. Questions about the future of Greece in the Eurozone, about the future of Franco-German relations, and perhaps even about the future of the Eurozone in general. So many issues to tackle, many questions to tackle, and we will do so with my three guests. Welcome to Theodor Kouvakos, who is the Berlin correspondent for the Greek weekly newspaper Paraskevi. Arnaud Boutet is the Berlin correspondent for the French public broadcaster France 2. And Friedrich Thelen, who has been the long-term correspondent and bureau chief of the German business weekly Wirtschaftswoche. Thank you all for being here, gentlemen. Theodoros Kouvakos, the headlines this week is all about the return of the Euro crisis. The Euro crisis is back and is back with a vengeance, we read often. But really, has it ever gone away?
Not really. And if we go a little bit back to 12 years ago in Lisbon, the treaty showed that we would end somewhere like that. And if we don't tackle the fundamentals of the problem, we are not going to see it going away.
So in Greece, did you ever get a sense that the Euro crisis was gone? I suppose not.
Definitely not.
And in France, Arnaud Boutet, did the Euro crisis, at least on the surface in the headlines, did it disappear at some point during the last few weeks?
It did during the campaign because most of the candidates, the French candidates didn't talk that much about this because you cannot win an election with austerity. So we didn't talk that much about the austerity. Of course, it was between the lines, but this is not the main topics, and now it's coming back by the back door.
Well, perhaps the French did not talk about the euro, but certainly about growth. We'll go more into detail about that. Friedrich Thelen, in Germany, the euro crisis, has it ever disappeared, vanished from the headlines?
No, never. I wouldn't say it has went as long as 12 years ago, like 2000, but I do think the last 2 years is always on your mind, like this American song. It was always on our mind, and especially on the political class, with answers to and fro. And it became a topic in the German political debate as well, because the Social Democrats in this country say, well, look, for France, Hollande does it. We want back, we don't say it, we want a pact for more growth. They don't say it openly. It's more Keynesian policies, and I think the debate is not over, but we will talk about this in a round.
We sure will, and the debate is not over. If anything, the debate may be just beginning. Certainly in Greece, where the country held elections last week with rather uncertain results.
Yeah, it was unfruitful. And we are probably having next round of elections in a month and something. And you don't know right now what's going to happen in a month and a half.
But isn't that a fateful development if the electorate doesn't vote properly? Then they're being sent back to the election poll to vote until they get out the right. Well, that's a bit of funny way of democracy.
Well, it was a stalemate. There wasn't any chance of forming a coalition government because everybody wouldn't talk with the Nazis.
True.
It should be legal, actually. And you can't have more than 50% of the votes in the parliament. So we have to go back.
Let's look in the details. The established parties, the traditional parties, if you will, in Greece, they were certainly punished for the austerity measures that they supported.
Not for the austerity measures.
No?
I don't think it is the austerity measures that people are punishing the two big parties for. I think they are punishing them for being in power for so long, being very corrupt and very incompetent. Okay, because after 1974, when the dictatorship went away from Greece, only the first few years were lucid. From then on, you had nepotism, corruption, incompetence, with the culmination of Greece joining the euro without being ready, as most European politicians knew, but they decided for political reasons and not for financial or any other reasons to welcome Greece into the euro.
But with all due respect, if the established parties, the traditional parties in Greece, were not punished for the austerity measures being put into place, then, if you will, their election defeat would have had to come much earlier, didn't it?
No, the austerity measures did have a role to play in the whole thing, but now people in Greece are divided in the sense that some of them, which have been part of the system, still vote for the so-called system, what was before. The rest, whether they are leftist or rightist or whatever, they just want a clean start, a clean new start.
Well, let's see if they got a clean new start in Greece. They certainly did not after Sunday's elections. Let's have a quick look at the current constellation. Where is Greece at right now politically?
In Greece, the mood on the street is sober. The fragmented nature of Sunday's vote is likely to spell uncertain months ahead. Both the conservative New Democracy Party and the socialist PASOK Party hemorrhaged support, shedding votes to the far-left alliance Syriza and other anti-austerity parties. For Syriza head Alexis Tsipras, the voters' message was loud and clear. Greece's bailout pledges are null and void. Greece's conservative leader, Antonis Samaras, has warned that reneging on the agreement would lead to Greece exiting the euro and to certain and immediate catastrophe. And despite the anti-austerity backlash, polls say most Greeks are in favor of staying in the eurozone. But without a stable government, Greece's next EU-IMF installment is likely to be put on hold, raising the specter of bankruptcy within weeks. What now for Greece?
Well, Theodoros Kouvakas, what next for Greece? I think what's really striking here is that the Greek people in general seem to be supporting staying in the Eurozone, but at the same time they are rejecting the austerity measures. So do they want to have their cake and eat it too?
Definitely, everybody would, especially if they're in dire straits. And you ask them, do you want to be rich and healthy, or would you rather be poor and sick? It's as simple as that.
But Friedrich Thielen, of course, we do not live in paradise where it's all about what one wants. As the Rolling Stones once said, you can't always get what you want. So in that sense, what would you advise Greece to do at this point?
Well, I'm not answering with the Rolling Stones, but a little gap. I can't get no satisfaction. That was from the Rolling Stones as well. But there is not much satisfaction in the game. I do understand that Greek people are happy with the euro, but what is an economic fact? Due to the fact that they entered the euro when they were not ready for it. But their standard of living went up by 40% in Greece, as in some other southern European countries. And unfortunately, that was on credit. It was the better credits you could get as a nation because being a member of the European Union. And they used the money not for infrastructure, to be more competitive, to bring Greece or Portugal, anything forward. They pumped it into the country. And they was consuming the credits. I mean, this is, election policy. And therefore, I think it's interesting what you said, that the Greek public is against the old policies, neo-democracia and all the law. I mean, the three big Greek political families, Mitsotakis, Papandreou, and then Venizelos in the middle with a long history, his family. The policy politics in Greece is among three major fractions or clans, and the Greek public is fed up with that. Is understandable. On the other hand, Greek public benefited for years and years and years from a standard of living which was not due to the fact of their own gross national product. This is due to politicians who said, if you vote for me, I take another 50,000 voters into the civil service without precondition, without university, without schooling. And these are symptoms of a crisis in the system. And now, I think it's very difficult to get out of the crisis, but my conviction is if Greece doesn't find or stick to the rules, they will be kicked out or expelled.
Well, the Greek politician Tsipras already said that he's not going to abide, or the austerity measures being put into place by the fiscal pact are not binding for him, are not binding for his party. And a lot of German politicians, Friedrich Thelen, are saying in the aftermath of the Greek elections and the statements made by Greek politician Tsipras that perhaps it's time for Greece to leave the Eurozone. What do you say?
Well, it's a very hard decision, but the final decision is made by the Greeks. You can't be in a union of people who do the same. So other governments or other nations within the Eurozone or even in Europe say, well, why did we have this? So for years and years we did restructure our debts like Slovakia or others, that we went to an austerity. And now some of the members of the European club say we don't want it. We get out of it. And and us? What about us? The government in Ireland did enormous effort, and that lost governments their majority. They were kicked out of office. What should the others say if we get away with it? And therefore, I think the only question is whether the banking and the European finance world used the 2 years since the beginning of the Greek crisis to stabilize their own financial institute. Did we use the time to not fall in the trap, which was the trap? If Greece is getting out of the euro, the rest of countries will fall down like dominoes. That was the theory. If we use the time, okay. If not, too bad.
Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel already said that the Greece bailout package is non-negotiable, nor is the fiscal pact for Chancellor Merkel. But of course, that is the exact same pact that the new French President, François Hollande, wants to renegotiate. The refocus should be, according to Hollande, should be on growth. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, it means that it wants to have the growth packet inside the fiscal packet in one piece. So this is something that's been among the French campaign, and François Hollande wants clearly to have it defined on the piece of paper. He wants to have one thing for everyone. And now he has to negotiate with the Chancellor Angela Merkel. And you have to understand that there is a big change in France right now. I mean, it's something really huge. It's not just like new elections. We have like a new president, socialist president. That's the second time in the last 60 years that we have this. And of course, there are lots of hopes from the French people. As I was saying just a few minutes ago, they didn't vote against the austerity measures. They mostly vote against a big system, against one man. You have to understand that a lot of people voted against Sarkozy. And in fact, they also voted against the Merkel-Sarkozy duet. That was also the only solution that was presented to the French people. And now, of course, there is no answer. They have to find an answer. They have to find like a sort of new coalition between France and Germany. But I think everything is possible. I mean, they say that everything is possible. And now it's the beginning of a new story that is very exciting because, of course, you have two different schools. Some say there is the austerity measures, the fiscal pact. It's absolutely non-negotiable. Okay, you can hear it. But the other part say, okay, there is something we can find, a little path behind the wood. And this path is with the growth packet inside, and everything is possible. And we have to, of course, do it with the Germans. We have to keep it. But we have to also figure out that we need to focus and spend some money on, you were saying, the goals that I think François Hollande wants to spend money on some future industries like the clean new energies and things like this. This is like a theory, and now we have to find. They have to find the practical way to do it. But it is the first chapter of a new story that begins right now, and it will, of course, have a new page next week when he will come here for the first time. He's never seen Angela Merkel before. I think they've been talking on the telephone for the first time on the night of the election. So these two didn't work together. They look the same a little bit. That's what the French people also are saying. I mean, Nicolas Sarkozy was very different from Angela Merkel when he started to work with her, and it was very difficult from the beginning because the two politicians were personally away one from each other. Here we have someone who is more like pragmatic, who can talk. I would say is more German than Sarkozy was. But in these ideas, now he has to be focused on two main things. We have some legislative elections coming in 1 month in France, and he needs to have a stable majority. Otherwise, he won't be able to run the country. And for that reasons, he needs to give, I would say, signs to his left part. And this is why he won't just let down his campaign promises right now. And this time is running out against Germany because they are signing the fiscal pact in about 1 month in the Bundestag.
That's right.
And this means that, of course, this is a big problem. It's going to be great negotiation for the next following days.
Certainly a lot of work still ahead. 25 countries signed the fiscal pact except Great Britain and the Czech Republic. But as you said correctly, it is not ratified yet. And we will have to see how that plays out. Theodoros Kouvakis, though, the emphasis on growth as being expressed by François Hollande must be met with a great deal of sympathy in Greece, no?
Definitely, yes. You have to keep in mind that the last 10 years in Europe there have been various transfers of funds from here to there, transfers of low interest rates from Germany to Greece, etc., and transfer of competitiveness from the small countries to the big countries. And you can see the Italian industry losing lots of ground in the global market. You can see Greek products being 50% down, Portuguese, Spanish. There has been a lot of change. And that's what I was referring to when I talked about the Lisbon Treaty. Do you remember when we said, okay, by 2010, Europe will be competitive and young people will be educated and jobs for everybody? You remember that, okay? When we changed some parts of the treaties, nothing of the kind has happened. Growth, which was the key word also in Lisbon by the year 2000, never came.
But Friedrich Thiel, and growth is the key word, is Theodoros Kouvakis is saying. But growth, at the end of the day, also means, in essence, more debt, doesn't it? I mean, the German approach to battling this crisis, the euro crisis, is clear. Angela Merkel has made it very clear that for her, it's fiscal discipline that is the emphasis. That the emphasis needs to be on.
Yeah. I mean, you can do lots of things, but you cannot rule or reign or govern against economic facts. And economic fact is that we have a tsunami-like financial wave coming to us. There is more liquidity after the 2008 crisis in the markets around. And if they come, then all decisions in euro or somewhere else will not help at all. Or whatever the Greek parliament decides, or the French, or the German, there is no chance. You cannot rule. Even some German politicians think about, well, we get out of the markets. Wonderful idea. For a country with 60% export, we're getting out of the market. Some people in the Social Democratic Party say these foolish things. But you cannot rule against economic facts. And someone must start to dry out these enormous lakes. And if you add more instruments of Maynard Keynes, i.e. the Keynesian politics, put more money in it. Someone has to get the money out later on. And unfortunately, politicians here don't seem very ready to do that, because they will say, save, yes, fiscal pact then and there, but not at my time. Now we still have to put more gas, more oil into the fire, that is good. And then we're going to pay it back. That didn't work. Germany only had one balanced in the last 30 years, 40 years, one balanced budget was in the year of reunification of 1989, before unification started here, or because that was the only balance. Before and afterwards, Germany was making more debts and more debt, and they're there. Yes. And someone has to dry them out. And I don't see any politicians. The only one government in the last 60 years was the American government. In 1944 and December, they were confronted with a debt of 125% of their gross national product. That was from the New Deal programs, Roosevelt and the war, which was expensive. Then they started a method to dry them out because they sold their state bonds below the inflation rate. That did that for 6, 7, 8 years. That meant a lot of slowing of growth and meant a lot of misery for normal citizens. I don't see anyone in Europe who dares to do that. But the money has to get away. Or you start an inflationary phase. And that, I think, is a very risky game.
Arnaud Boutet, Friedrich Thelen is saying there are certain economic realities that cannot be ignored. François Hollande, of course, was campaigning when he was placing the emphasis on growth. But, of course, might be a different ballgame for him now that he's actually in power.
Mm-hmm. The main point is that he considers that the austerity can kill the austerity. And this is something that a lot of the 1,000 European countries believe also. It's not against austerity, I think, but it's mostly that there is a system that at what point doesn't work anymore, and you can have like a good model, which is Germany today in Europe, but you cannot force the other one to spend cuts and cuts again without any growth, because little by little this is going against the wall, and very soon it will be too late. So I think today it's, of course, there is some keywords that you cannot not consider, but you have, they have to find another solution. And there is, it's all about the economics, you're right, but it's mostly political right now. And there is like a new balance. It used to be France and Germany which were ruling Europe for the last 1-2 years with a duet that was working more or less pretty well. But now the cards are in the game, and there is something that is new coming. And those new paths probably are scaring a lot of the, I would say, German, those people who consider that, of course, for good reasons, there is austerity pact which has to be continued.
But if I understand you correctly, you found austerity measures by and of itself to be self-defeating, to be a vicious cycle, if you will.
It could be if there is nothing around it. It could be like if there is nothing around it. What's happening in Greece and Spain and probably today is, of course, you can see that half of the youth are unemployed. You have a situation that is absolutely like a nightmare. And, of course, for political reasons, politicians just can't say and wait for this to happen. And I think a lot of the French people are quite keen on what Merkel has done for the last few years. Okay, I think she's well seen in France. She's a woman. She has strength. But what happened in Greece, what happened in Spain, and I would say those austerity measures that were forced to be correctly adapted, this is something that a lot of the French found it a little bit hard. They maybe would have appreciated to have, I would say, some different solutions also.
But won't you say that tough times call for tough measures?
It has to. But when you see that a lot of people suicide in Italy because they don't have work, and when you see that in Greece also, most of the young people with diplomas are leaving the country. That means in 20 years, what will remain? Poor people, non-educated people, and a country that will be on its knees. And of course, when you ruin something, when you governing is preventing, you have to think for the next 10, 20, 25 years.
But of course, there are some positive examples regarding these austerity measures, aren't there? Ireland is one. Estonia is another one. Germany, we forget Germany.
One must go back to the social democratic government. One could also defend the theory not bourgeois or whatever you thought. Merkel is not a right-wing government. It's more middle of the road with a lot of social democratic strains in her policies. But it wasn't her government. It was Gerhard Schröder, the chancellor before her, who exercised. Well, the socialists here are social democrats. Well, if you call him a socialist, he would say, no, I'm a social democrat. Anyhow, they imposed restructuring measures which were very biting and which lost him his job. But the governments after it, Merkel 1, Merkel 2, we're now in the phase Merkel 2, they profit from the fact that social democrat or socialists have changed the country. So the chance is, like General de Gaulle was the only one to give Algeria free, said, I have understood, and then gave Algeria freedom. It could be a social democrat or socialist in France who imposes the restructuring methods which are necessary to bring France, part of France is totally competitive, no problem, but there are areas which have to be, and the influence of the state has to be reduced. That is something in Greece as well. But if maybe a social democrat, socialist can do that better than another, if he takes up the job.
It's always easier to do a right-wing policy when you're from the left-wing party, of course.
And the other way
I think
around.
most of the French people are quite afraid of like an Agenda 2020. Yeah. I mean, they know exactly what happened in Germany, of course, and they know that are some bad parts or bad effects on the policy that has been conducted here for the €1 jobs and things like this. And
but we forgot sometimes Germany not too long ago was considered the sick man of Europe.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, why can't this example, positive example, also work and be implemented for other countries such as France?
It could, but it's going to take a long time, and this is not exactly the direction that is being taken right now, I think.
And politicians normally don't think in long term. They think in short terms, in re-election terms.
What happened is Nicolas Sarkozy probably wanted to make the hard decisions on the second mandate, and that was scheduled like this. I mean, you need to be re-elected for that. So if you do everything on the first mandate, it's very complicated. That's what happened, for example, with Schröder, and that was very tough. But I think he missed it, and now somebody has to keep on going with I would say the strong measures.
Maybe the French didn't only decide on austerity, also that Sarkozy was not popular anymore. It had personal deficits.
Of course. He was the one that a lot of people wanted to kick out, and there was at least a few slogans. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, for example, which was supposed to be the third man. In fact, he finished the fourth between Marine Le Pen. But he was clearly saying, I am kicking him out. I'm not voting for Hollande. I am kicking him out Nicolas Sarkozy.
And even
30% or more than 30% of the French voted against, of course, Europe as it is today, voted mostly against Sarkozy, and also against the austerity measures.
So Theo Kovakas, it's become clear also throughout the discussion it needs the right balance between austerity measures and growth. So the search for these measures will continue for some time to come. The search for a new government in Greece will certainly go on. They might not find it. They might not form a government until the next installment of EU funds is due.
Next installment has been checked, and it's going to be disbursed next week or this week. But the problem is not this week or next week. The problem is next month, when we have repayments due, which will not be able to fulfill. I don't know.
Do you foresee new elections?
Definitely.
In Greece? There's no way out of it?
Most probably. There's going to be an attempt to form a global government, an ecumenic government. That's how we call it in Greece, from everybody taking part in it. Yeah. I don't know if they call the Nazis also.
Well, Friedrich Thelen, the patience with Greece is certainly wearing thin, certainly in Germany. What would be the consequences, if we would play it out theoretically, what would be the consequences of Greece leaving the Eurozone?
Well, if Greece decides to leave or is kicked out because they don't fulfill their commitments, then definitely the European Union has to come to help those 7, 8, 9 billion Greeks. survive. I mean, we will not see a falling state in Europe in any case, but it will not be any longer within. Yeah, but
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure. There is no sort
Europe
of full...
has done it before, more than once.
What is a failing
Seeing
state?
a country going down on its knees and...
But I'm talking about failing states, sort of breaking into pieces with no central government, no justice. That has not happened in Europe.
No.
So that's what I call a failing state. That will not happen, I do think. And there are a lot of funds. I mean, there's a lot of... That is possibly one way out for the new French president, Hollande. There are funds in Brussels to help restructure. There's money enough. You have to put it into... Maybe that's a face-saving operation for Hollande.
This is the money he wants to use for the growth pact, is growth part inside the fiscal part, of course. It's that's Barroso is saying in Europe. I mean, we have some money, let's use it, and this is the way it should be done. I mean, that's. But if Greece is leaving the eurozone, I mean, the main question that will be on everybody's lips is who will be the next one.
Oh,
and
will
the
there be a next one? That's the question,
will have to be a big one, because Greece is a small country compared to Spain, and everybody's looking at Portugal and Spain, of course.
So would a domino effect be inevitable?
Of course.
That was my argument before. At the beginning, I said everyone looks whether you can contain that development, so no domino, stabilizing. It's a question of the financial markets in Europe. Are the financial institutions, i.e. banks in these countries, in France and Italy, stable enough to get through the crisis? And Greece, as such, is not a major factor of economy.
Definitely not.
The danger, sort of infecting the rest, is what was always as you said, German nerves, like sin. That is true. I mean, if you see that part of the ruling class, I wouldn't say, but you know, the financial influential in Greece export billions and billions of euro, and then think, what is that? The country is really in the mess. It's in the mess, and the financial elite transport their money to Switzerland. That is really causing a lot of unfriendly feeling here, or in Austria, or in Switzerland. They get the money, I wouldn't say, but in other European countries, something has to be done, that the money we pump into there is not flying out for Niarchos, Livanos, and the like.
And let me note something. Greek people, of what I perceive, are not against what Mrs. Merkel is saying that should be done, which is to clean up your act and go on. They are rather reluctant because they see Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Sarkozy before and all the Brussels people talking with the ones who were bribed by Siemens, by Ferrostal and German, French, English, Russian companies, and their governments knew that they were bribing ministers and officials.
In Greece?
In Greece and other countries, in Hungary, in Italy, there's been bribes everywhere. We know that, okay? Not only Germans, other companies have been bribing their way around for a long time. So they see that Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Sarkozy would rather talk with the ones who were part of this system than talk with the others. So they are reluctant because they say, okay, maybe this is kind of a complot. They just are here to take the burden of the debt, take the burden of the private debt, which was towards banks, because the Greek public debt was towards private banks, not towards other states, and convert that into a public debt, a national debt to other nations. Okay?
But let me focus just briefly again on the future scenario. If we say that through an exit of Greece from the Eurozone, the domino effect, as you say, Arnaud Bouteau, is inevitable, does that also send the wrong signal, if you will, to the Greek people if they feel, well, the EU is going to come and bail us out no matter what at the end of the day? I
don't think the Greek people are very keen on receiving, I would say, sentences from the Germans or the French saying you have to do this. I mean, it's been the way like this for 1 year, 2 years. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you have like the extreme right now in the parliament, because a bit fed up of being considered as kids, even though, I mean, the mistakes have been done. I think if you don't do it for the Greek, you do it for yourself. That's what a lot of the financial institutions are thinking today. I mean, if you helping Greece today staying in the euro will keep at least Europe like it is, and it will probably cost much less money than if they go away, because after that nobody knows exactly what's going to cost. So, I mean, that's quite cynical. But if you don't do it for them, you do it for you, and you know that it will probably be worse than it is today.
I think it's a very dangerous lesson, very dangerous indeed. If you let them get away with that, all other austerity measures in other governments will stop. They say, well, if the Greeks get away, or the Portuguese or someone else, why do we do it and lose power? Why we restructure state fund? We really do austerity, and that costs us power. That is going. This is a very. First, I don't think that the domino effect is inevitable. I don't think so. This is, well, in the gas. Second, the example for others is devastating. I mean, one gets away, why them? Then you too. Then the whole thing is, at the end, we come back to the same problem. Who is going to dry out the money which is there in the world? I agree, with no growth, Europe gets down on its knees. This is true. But the growth cannot come from artificial measures. The growth must come from restructuring. But yes, money has gone to Greece. Agree. Yes, but the problem in Greece is that the political infrastructure of the country, let's say, lacks certain qualities, to put it very diplomatic
but
and
how
mildly.
do you restructure a country in a few years? I mean, Greece is... when Papandreou came, he said, okay, we have some sun, we have to put some solar system there. But, I mean, that was just the beginning, and that's about it. In France, for example, there is Germany is a country with a strong industry, exported-oriented industry. I mean, you don't do it like this. I mean, a lot of the people and a lot of the politicians in Europe don't want to sacrifice one generation today. They're not ready for that, because they know that it's going to be very difficult. And this Agenda 2020 that has to be maybe done in countries like France or Spain or Italy, they know exactly what it means. I mean, it can work with the industry on your back. If you don't have this, you cannot create it like this in 10 years. That means it's a big bet. So going too fast on one direction on the austerity pact, that's what I think the new government in France is saying, may be unsuccessful. And you have to sometimes moderate a little bit this way of doing it.
So Theo Kovakas, then we can all agree, or we have all agreed, that it's certainly going to take a lot of time to repair the damage, if you will, being caused. But if we are in it for the long haul, then is a transfer union not inevitable at the end of the day? A transfer union where the rich North, if you will, is going to pay for a struggling South?
We already have a transfer union in practical terms a long time now. And it's not only funds, as I told you before, it's also competitiveness, and it's also intelligence and knowledge. And yes, there is a transfer union. This is a transfer union. But if we want to see the problem, we should not look at the symptoms, and we should look a little bit at the Brussels institutions, which, if they had done their job properly, we wouldn't have to talk about austerity measures, because there is everything in the pacts. Everything.
Not enacted, unfortunately.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's due to German governments and French and Italian, and let them get away with it. Oh, in 2003, now the Minister of Finance of the day, with Eichel, is confessing in public and saying, we were not...
We knew it. He said we knew it.
We broke the pact too, not that much as in Greece, but for a little period, for 2 years,
yes,
we were not in the line. So we were not in a position to tell others to do so. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the... But after that, one should have returned to that. The Europeans let it happen for definite reasons. But now, nobody is going to answer the question, or they're going away from that question, avoiding it. What is going to happen if the inflation goes up? Because
how much?
Well, it's not how much.
How much?
Look at the liquidity.
Enough to make Germany more competitive, or to have internal problems.
You could take it away from Europe. They take the whole Euro business out of it. Look what the IMF is saying. They don't have a special, even they have French members in it, Madame Lagarde, and they have international view. And they say the money which is there has to be dried out. It has. Mm-hmm. And it's not the question whether the inflation rate goes back to 2 or 3%. The question is whether this money is going to flood over us. And at the end of every inflation is the cut. And that is hurting not the 10% who have real estate, forest, agriculture, shares, but those normal receivers of income, of pensions, and have only a little bit of money. So it is against small people. At the end of the day, and that is the lesson learned in Germany over the last 100 years, inflation is against the small people, the 95% of society. But unfortunately, politicians don't think of those, but they think of their re-election, which is now and not in 20 years.
Well, speaking of elections, Arnaud Bouteau, to wrap up the discussion, the whole Euro crisis, if you will, has led to more populism and more nationalism in the European Union, hasn't it? Very much the opposite to what the EU was intended for from the get-go, as well as the Euro. Mm-hmm. Where do you see this is headed?
Well, what we see is that every outgoing government is falling down because of the crisis, and some of them, have Greece, Holland, in France. I mean, we did 30. I mean, Marine Le Pen did 18% on the first round of the presidential election. That was much more than her father did in 2002.
And did not support Sarkozy, the right-wing party, in the second election. She gave their voters free. If she would said,
could not support him, of course. We have some legislative election behind. She needs to have. She tries to have some deputy in we call it a triangulaire. I mean, it's going to be a massacre for the next following weeks in France for that. So. Yes, but there is a hunger that, of course, everybody has to understand. And this hunger is expressed in a certain way in Greece, in France also, with the extremes, left and right. And this is a way of telling to the politicians that this is not exactly what we do, and the election is still here to be able to express yourself.
Well, the European people will certainly continue to express themselves in more elections to come. It's clear that the Euro crisis is back with a vengeance if it ever went away. I want to thank my three guests for this very spirited discussion and a few references to the Rolling Stones. I want to thank you all out there for watching and looking forward to seeing you again next week for a new edition of Quadriga.